Hello everyone, my name is Zach and welcome to my channel. Amongst other things, I am a reenactor and a jouster. And today I want to talk to you about this type of armour here that I'm wearing. This is my Gambeson. You might know it by other names, but I tend to call it a Gambeson. And by that I mean a type of padding that is worn underneath mail. This particular one, you can't really see it, but it goes to mid-thigh, and it's kind of based on 13th century examples. It's designed to be worn underneath a full long sleeve mail hauberk. And really what I wanted to say was that this example and many other examples that are worn by reenactors, I think, are too thick. Now, my first piece of evidence for this is historical art. If we have a look at art from the 13th century, or all around then really, we see that medieval knights, kings, lords wearing their mail tend to be a lot slimmer than reenactors who are wearing mail over gambesons. Now that isn't just because people nowadays tend to be broader. I myself am very slim, as a few of you keen-eyed observers have noticed, and when I'm wearing this with mail I still look quite broad. But some people would say, well, we know that artists don't always get it right, and maybe they decided to make them look slimmer so that they would be happier. But I don't think that's the way that fashion works. Fashion follows what the rich and the powerful do. And so what that means is that if a knight or a lord or a king dresses in a certain way out of necessity, then fashion changes to follow that particular style. We see this very much in the 16th century. When Henry VIII puts on a lot of weight, the male clothing gets a lot broader across everyone. Every Englishman starts wearing big baggy shoulders, lots of layers, so that they all end up looking like the king. When his daughter, Queen Elizabeth, comes to the throne, there's a big change again, and the style goes to be a lot slighter. Even the cut of the doublet changes to look more like the cut of Elizabeth's corsets. And this sort of thing happens all throughout the medieval period. Whatever the rich and the powerful are doing is what becomes fashionable. So the idea that an artist would change what someone is looking like to be different from how a rich and powerful person would look is kind of strange. In fact, I think it probably wouldn't happen. So we need to ask then, why are we looking a lot bigger than the historical art? Now, one thing is that very often as reenactors we don't have the same amount of money, and so the mail that we are wearing is not as tailored as historical examples. But I think the biggest thing is our gambesons, and the padding that we're wearing underneath is probably a lot thicker than historical examples. Now, if you do reenacting, or if you fight in Boha, you may say to me, well actually no, I've tested it and we need to have that much padding. And you may not be wrong. To be honest, what we do is quite a lot different to what a historical knight would be doing. Our weapons need to be blunt along the edges to fulfill safety guidelines. That means that they're a lot heavier. That when we're being struck by them, the danger to us is the blunt force trauma, not the cutting power. A medieval knight, when being struck by a sharp sword, is more at danger of the cutting power and a slight blunt force trauma. This means that they'll be relying more on the mail over the top and less on the padding to do the actual protection. Don't get me wrong, there is some blunt force trauma that comes from a sharp sword, but it's nowhere near as much as the tip-heavy blunt blades that we often use in reenactment. So that's one reason why they might be wearing armour that is a lot thinner. I should say padding that is a lot thinner. Another reason is that I don't think that they would be using it with the same expectations as we are. We tend to put on our padding shortly before our reenactment battle and take it off shortly after. However, a medieval person on campaign might be expected to march and ride for days at a time in their armour. Well, uncomfortably thick padding that makes it slightly more difficult to move is easier for us to wear for the hour or so that we do it than for someone who might be wearing it for as long as a medieval person on campaign would be. Every little bit of weight that they add on, they might need to be carrying for 12 hours at a time. And so every saving they can make is going to be very much appreciated. It's not just the weight of the padding itself, which isn't actually negligible. It can weigh quite a lot, but it's also the added weight of the mail that needs to go over the top. For every inch or so that you add around your waist, you're adding quite a lot of weight to the hauberk itself, as it needs to expand to go round. So the weight that they're carrying is really important. But I think as well that we tend to think of our armour in a different way to them, because for us it's about preventing us from getting hurt, whereas for them it was about preventing them from dying. Now that may seem like that's splitting hairs, but actually I think that's quite a big difference. As a modern reenactor or bowhunter or jouster, any of those things, our hobby is fighting with swords or lances or spears or whatever it is. That's our hobby, and we expect to go back to work maybe the next day, maybe after a week or so, without any or many bruises or broken bones or anything like that. However, the people that wore this armour originally were professional soldiers. That is basically what a knight is. You know, his main job, obviously he's a landowner, but his main job is to be able to fight to protect the king and the country. So his expectation to not get hurt at all when hit on the arm or something like that, it is probably not there. He's expecting that there is going to be, you know, some bruises, maybe the occasional broken bone. I remember reading once that a quote from a knight that says, if a man has not had his teeth broken, then he is not a real man. So these guys, they expect that there is going to be some damage done to their bodies. What they want this armor to do is to make sure that that damage is not debilitating to the extent that they can no longer fight, and that that damage is not going to cause them to die in most situations. Now obviously, if they were struck right in the middle of the chest by a lance, then that's it. That's probably going to be game over, no matter how good your hauberk is. But I shouldn't think that any amount of padding that is still going to allow you to move is really going to do huge amounts of difference in that kind of a situation. What we find is that most armour, and this goes for later periods as well, into the 15th and the 16th century, most armour is designed to try and stop most blows, or at least reduce them to the point that it's a minor inconvenience rather than something that will kill you outright. All throughout the medieval period, in fact throughout the whole history of warfare, armour has been designed to be in that spot where it protects you against most damage, but it does not give you complete protection, because complete protection will stop you from being an effective soldier. And remember, being an effective soldier is not just about in the melee press. It's also about being able to travel quickly and efficiently. It's about being able to fight without tiring for too long, stand in line or on guard duty without tiring. All of those sorts of things are important facets to the medieval knight that are not things that we have to worry about as reenactors. So what's the point of this video? What am I trying to say? Basically what I'm saying is that the modern Gambeson that is padding worn underneath male, is actually not an exact copy of historical gambesons, that is padding worn underneath male, because our modern hobby has different stresses on it and different needs from the garment than the historical garment had for its original owners. So what does that mean for us? Do we all take off our gambesons, throw them in the fire and burn them? Well, no. I've been very clear about this. Our modern needs are different to the historical needs. But if we are aware of these differences, then that means that we can make more accurate decisions on what we want based on what we're doing. If you're fighting in a boho style melee, then maybe you need that extra padding. I don't know, I've never done it. And so therefore you can make the informed decision to wear more padding than your historical counterpart would have done. But you're aware of it. And so that means when you're talking to other people, you know, and you can point out to them the differences between your kit and their kit. As a reenactor, what you decide to do will probably be based on what your aims are as a reenactor. If you're the kind of person that just likes to turn up and have a good time and chuck a sword around the field, well, maybe not chuck it, but you know what I mean, wave a sword at your friends and have some fun around a fire in the evening, then great. A thicker, more modern gambeson is probably a better thing for you, but at least now you know that it's a bit thicker than its historical counterpart, and when the general public come past your tent in the Living History Village, you can say, actually this is probably a bit thicker and a little bit heavier than the originals, but it's mostly the same. And if you're going for a full-on living history interpretation, then maybe you do want to get rid of your current padding and go for something that is a bit more historically accurate. Now, Isaac Krogh and Arne Kurtz have done some amazing things with their 13th century gear. As you can see, it does show the size of the body a lot closer to those historical monuments and paintings that we see from the 13th century. And that's the kind of thing, if you're going for a full living history interpretation, that you may be wanting to do. Well, thanks very much for listening to my rant, my ramble, whatever you want to call it. If you liked this video, please do subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a like, share it with your friends. If you've got any questions or any suggestions for videos that you'd like to see, please do leave them in the comments down below. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much. It is almost Christmas time, so if you celebrate that, Merry Christmas, and if not, Happy Holidays. And I will see you in my next video. Bye-bye.